The day I realized my name had been missing from my own child's life, the clock in the school office wouldn't stop ticking. It was loud, too loud. Each second landed like an accusation. The secretary slid the form across the desk and said, gently, "We just need the original birth certificate, ma'am." I smiled, the way women do when they don't want their panic to show. "Of course," I said. "I'll bring it tomorrow." But my hands were already cold. Because I had never seen that document. Not once. Not when my baby was born. Not when we moved houses. Not in all the years I packed lunches, kissed scraped knees, and whispered prayers over a sleeping child. I drove home in silence, one question pounding louder than the engine. What kind of grandmother keeps a mother's proof of love locked away? Before that day, my life felt ordinary, in the quiet, hard-working way most mothers live. Mornings began with burnt toast and rushed shoelaces. My child liked the crusts cut off and the socks folded just right. I worked part-time at a small clinic, the kind where the coffee was always stale and everyone knew your name. My husband was steady, soft-spoken, more comfortable fixing things than talking about feelings. And then there was my mother-in-law. She lived with us during those early years, moving through the house like she belonged to it long before I ever did. She cooked our meals, folded the baby's clothes, and reminded me, often, that she had raised 3 children without complaining. When my postpartum depression wrapped around me like fog, she stepped in eagerly. "Let me handle things," she'd say, already reaching for my baby. At the time, I called it help. I didn't know help could come with strings. The first doubt didn't arrive loudly. It came in pieces. A missing document when we applied for a passport. A casual, "I'll keep the important papers safe," spoken before I could answer. The way my mother-in-law's hand lingered too long on my child's shoulder whenever someone called her your mom. I told myself I was imagining it. New mothers often do. We second-guess everything. Our instincts, our memories, our right to feel unsettled. Once, I asked lightly, "Where do we keep the birth certificate?" She didn't look up from the sink. "Oh, I have it. You were very unwell back then. I didn't want things getting lost." Her voice was calm, reasonable, and somehow final. That night, as I folded laundry, I realized something chilling. She never said when she'd give it back, and I never asked again. The truth didn't come from my mother-in-law. It came from a thin form and a woman behind a desk who didn't know she was undoing my life. When I finally requested a certified copy from the records office, the clerk frowned at her screen. "That's strange," she said. "You're listed, but not as the legal guardian." My throat tightened. "What do you mean, not the guardian?" She turned the monitor slightly. I saw my child's name, my husband's, and beneath, my mother-in-law's name, filed as the primary registrant. I felt dizzy. That's impossible. I gave birth. The clerk hesitated. There was an amendment filed a few months after the birth, signed, notarized. I drove home straight, my hands shaking so badly I had to sit in the car before going inside. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. "I was protecting the baby," she said calmly, "from you." I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I sat down because my knees could no longer hold me. "From me?" I repeated, tasting the bitterness of it. She folded her arms, as if explaining something practical. "You were unstable. You cried all the time. What if something happened? I made sure the baby would stay in this family." That word, "this," cut deep, as if I wasn't part of it. That night, after everyone slept, I gathered what little I had: hospital discharge papers, old text messages, photos of me holding my newborn with IV tape still on my arm. I called a legal aid office the next morning and whispered my story to a stranger who listened without judgment. For the first time in years, I didn't feel crazy. I felt focused. If she thought silence meant weakness, she had mistaken me. The truth has a way of refusing to stay quiet. Once the legal process began, questions followed, first from my husband, then from his siblings, then from relatives who had always treated me like a guest instead of family. Legal letters arrived in thick white envelopes. Phone calls went unanswered. My mother-in-law stopped attending community gatherings. People noticed. At the hearing, she sat stiffly, hands clenched in her lap, as the judge read the timeline aloud. Dates, signatures, decisions made without my consent. When the judge asked her why she hadn't informed me, her voice finally shook. I thought I knew better. The room was silent. No one yelled, no one clapped, but something shifted. Control thrives in darkness. That day, light did its quiet work. The paperwork was corrected slowly, like healing skin. My name was restored, not as a favor, but as a fact. For the first time in years, I slept through the night, not because life was perfect, but because my body finally believed it was safe to rest. My child didn't understand the legal language, only that I smiled more, held them with steadier arms, laughed without looking over my shoulder. My husband apologized in pieces, some days with words, some days with silence. Trust, I learned, doesn't return all at once. As for my mother-in-law, I didn't seek revenge. I set boundaries, clear ones, legal ones, emotional ones. I stopped explaining myself. Motherhood is not something that can be filed away, hidden, or claimed by someone else's fear. It lives in the everyday acts of love, and I was finally free to live them without permission. Sometimes, the deepest betrayals don't come with shouting or slammed doors. They arrive quietly, disguised as concern, as help, as family knows best. For years, I blamed myself for not asking more questions, for being too tired, too trusting, too afraid to push back. But motherhood taught me this truth. A woman does not lose her rights because she struggles. She does not disappear because someone else decides to step in. If you're listening to this and something in your life feels off, a document you've never seen, a decision you were never part of, trust that feeling. Ask the question. Take up space. I'd like to know, if someone had crossed that line with your child, would you have stayed silent, or would you have fought back too? Thank you for listening. If this story touched you, support the channel, share it with someone who needs strength today, and remember, you are not replaceable.